Once upon a time, I was hopelessly obsessed with Destiny PvP. I remember getting my first taste of the Crucible in week 1 of vanilla Destiny, and I was hooked. There was so much to explore. What weapons were good? Whoa, what was that super? What the heck did that guy just kill me with? How do I get that gun? The game was so vast, so unexplored. I remember watching videos and reading Reddit posts about which blue auto rifle was the best because no one had even acquired a legendary yet. Eventually, players found the original loot cave and started getting legendaries and exotics, and the first meta was born. Season after season, year after year, Bungie would implement balance patches that changed up the meta, always aiming to fix whatever the community deemed to be the most broken weapons and abilities at the time. Some of these metas are looked back upon as the golden eras of Destiny PvP history. The House of Wolves era in particular, with the Last Word and Thorn dominating the Crucible and the early Trials of Osiris, is held by many veteran players as the glory days of PvP. But with each passing season, I felt a sense of apathy building up over Destiny's Crucible, and lately, based on the lack of updates and additions to the Crucible, many community members seem to be wondering if Bungie even cares about PvP anymore. Recently, I was invited to attend a virtual summit at Bungie to talk with the devs and give my feedback, and while I can't talk about the details, I can tell you firsthand that the people in charge really do want the game to succeed, and I can tell that they deeply are passionate about the Crucible just like many of us players have been over the years. But despite this clear passion, it's no secret that PvP has felt a bit forgotten over the last few seasons. We haven't had a new PvP map added to the game for nearly 2 years now. The survival playlist, which was at one point the pinnacle Crucible activity, feels like it no longer has a purpose, and Trials has been in a sad state with a dwindling population overrun by cheaters and account recoveries. In weeks that feature good loot and a good map, it can still be a fun experience provided you're at least significantly above average in PvP. But if the map or loot is bad, it's borderline unplayable, and unfortunately, the modern day Trials is brutally difficult for more casual players. It's nowhere near as accessible as it was during the peak player population days of Destiny 1. So, what happened? How did a game with some of the best feeling gunplay of any first-person shooter ever fall to such lows? If you ask me, it's a matter of identity crisis. The Crucible just doesn't seem to know who it's actually designed to please. Hardcore players will tell you that it's lacking key features needed to be competitive, like a dedicated server networking model, effective anti-cheat measures, and a true ranking system that matches players against appropriately skilled opponents. Casual players will tell you that the games are too sweaty and too cheesy, and there's no point in playing if there's not a loot reward immediately attached to the activity. Once the said reward has been earned, these players immediately dip out and head back to PvE. But what if this wasn't the case? In my vision of the ideal Crucible experience, there are 2 main pillars that drive player incentive and keep both casual and hardcore players hooked on the game. These are Aspiration and Innovation. Let's tackle Aspiration first. My best memories in PvP are when there was something difficult to obtain that made me really work for it. Longtime Destiny 2 players will remember towards the end of the Curse of Osiris season, when Bungie first announced the Redrix Claymore and the revamped competitive mode now with a ranking system. Hype in PvP went from 0 to 60 faster than at any point that I can remember in the almost 7 years I've been playing this game. When we got the first glimpse of Desperado in action on the Claymore, it was all the PvP community could talk about. Dedicated Crucible fanatics just had to get their hands on this absolute slayer of a pulse rifle. The competition was fierce, maybe too fierce. Players who made it to Fabled, Mythic, or Legend in Season 3 will probably never forget it. They have countless war stories to tell, from the lows of losing a whole day's worth of progress from a single loss thanks to the loss streak mechanic, to the sweet victory of finally obtaining the Claymore, one of the rarest guns in Destiny history. Now, I'm not saying that this is the perfect solution to Destiny's current issues. I think locking one of the most powerful weapons behind such a high skill gate in PvP causes major issues with balance in the game, especially since it's one that already struggles to keep casual players more engaged. However, I do think that those early competitive days sparked the initial concept of what could be a fantastic element of Destiny's Crucible, a true ranking system where players were incentivized to progress and climb the ladder to show off their accolades. If you look at any top FPS game these days, the ranking system allows players to flex their rank in some way. You can climb to Global Elite in Counter-Strike, Radiant in Valorant, Grandmaster in Overwatch, or Predator in Apex Legends. These are in-game titles that players grind towards with no overpowered loot attached. There's simply honor and praise earned among peers for reaching the highest rank. In Destiny though, reaching 5500 glory or legend rank is almost meaningless. Sure, it was special back in the earlier seasons, especially when Not Forgotten was the holy grail of PvP, but these days it feels like there's almost no reason to even bother with the playlist. This is really sad to me, because competitive modes in games are the most fun when there's an active player base with appropriate levels of competition. I have friends who grind CSGO every week even though they're still ranked somewhere down in silver because they find the game so incredibly fun to play, especially when matched against comparably skilled opponents. This is where SBMM or skill-based matchmaking absolutely thrives. It's perfectly designed for a true ranking ladder. Outside of the prestige of earning a particular rank, in Destiny we also have an incredible loot system that could add so much incentive to play on top of the rank achievements. What if climbing the ranks towards 5500 glory earned you some of the greatest cosmetics ever created in Destiny? This would keep players who want to improve hooked on the grind without upsetting power balance. Think of all the options we have here for showing off your duds. You could have exclusive shaders, weapon and armor ornaments, sparrows, ships, ghost shells, titles, and generally glowy things. People really love glowy things, myself included. I think for the system to be successful though, there are a lot of prerequisites that need to be addressed first. We recently saw a huge mid-season balance patch for weapons. I love to see these more frequent balance passes, the more the better. I know they are incredibly time intensive to publish thanks to the complexity of the interactions in the sandbox, but I think that players are more willing to forgive weapons and abilities that come out a bit too hot as long as they are adjusted frequently to find the right equilibrium. The worst case is a situation like we had with Stasis, where it was incredibly overtuned for several months before getting a significant nerf, causing it to be nearly the only logical thing to use for high-level PvP. This type of situation just can't happen if a competitive ladder system has any chance of succeeding in Destiny. I also worry about the current networking system. Latency in the Crucible has been in a rough spot for a long time, and these problems just get exacerbated when you start matching with a smaller pool of players who are spread around the globe in the higher ranks. Issues with melee registration, for example, can be infuriating, with players teleport zigzagging across the map attempting to land a hit. Ideally, a dedicated server model would be implemented for this type of a ranking system to truly succeed, but I think that's fairly unlikely to happen if we're being honest. Hopefully, at the minimum, improvements to the netcode are a high priority topic to ease some of the networking related issues that we face day to day in PvP. Speaking of high priority, cheating in the Crucible absolutely must be handled at least to some level in order to have a successful ladder system. Playing against aimbots, wall hackers, eternal super or heavy ammo spammers just doesn't sound like my idea of a good time. This issue is a particularly hard one to solve, especially considering that even Riot Games with Valorant struggles to get cheating fully sorted out when requiring root level access to a player's system in order to play. Regardless of the potential problems, I think that if Bungie implemented a system that encouraged players of all levels to participate and attempt to improve, it would be a monumental step in the right direction for PvP. This type of a system would help to keep the more hardcore players engaged, but what about the more casual players who don't really care about grinding for a particular rank? After all, the casual player base is the lifeblood of any game. If you lose the interest of the casual player, the population will die off quickly. While creating this video, I wanted to get some feedback from members of my community. I created posts on YouTube, Twitter, and my community Discord server looking for feedback about what people like and dislike regarding the current state of PvP. Wow, the comments came flooding in. Thank you so much if you're one of the people who left your thoughts, I truly appreciate it. While reading through this feedback, there were two things that were abundantly clear. Players love Destiny gunplay and movement, and also, there's basically no reason to play PvP right now. This tweet from D-Bear struck me particularly hard, suggesting that casual players only play PvP because they're forced to thanks to a quest or bounty, and then as soon as the loot has been obtained, it's time to head right back to PvE. This pains me to read because I know it's mostly true. I've heard this type of feedback from many players during my live streams and in my YouTube comment section. Many players only participate in PvP like they're being forced to as a job. PvP for them is only there to earn some power levels, or because it's required as a particular part of a quest, or to get some weapon that's helpful in PvE. Then as soon as that mission is complete, Crucible is basically useless to them. But what if that wasn't the case? What if casual players actually wanted to play PvP because it was fun? This brings us to pillar number 2, innovation. For many years now, Destiny PvP has essentially boiled down to some variant of the original Team Slayer mode from Halo. Slay enemies in Team Deathmatch. Slay enemies while protecting circles in Control. Slay enemies until you're the last alive in Trials or Survival. It goes on, and basically it's the same in every scenario. If you're not particularly good at slaying enemies, I totally understand why PvP might not be very fun for you, and to me that's a problem. But what if we had more innovative game modes where casual players could participate and feel like valuable members of a team even if they didn't have the greatest gun skill yet? I'd love to see more casual players carrying the flag in a game of classic Capture the Flag, or carrying the charge in Rift if that mode ever comes back from Destiny 1. Maybe they could be the one driving the vehicle to escort a flag across a map in a Destiny version of Big Team Battle, or standing in a hot zone of King of the Hill with a healer build, helping their more Slayer-focused teammates stay alive longer. Or what if Bungie made a Destiny-flavored mode of Rush or Grand Operations from the Battlefield franchise, where you progressively push through segments of a much larger map trying to blow up objectives, while the defenders did their best to prevent your advance. We already have the basic mechanics set up for this from the old Countdown mode with bomb planting and defusal. By the way, if you're interested in Battlefield, I have another YouTube channel I created recently covering the new Battlefield 2042 game coming out soon. It's linked in the description if you're interested to check it out. Following the same train of thought, what about a payload protection mode like you may have seen in Overwatch or Team Fortress? This could be so fun and interesting in the Destiny sandbox. Bungie was the developer that brought us Halo after all, with fun modes like Infection, Oddball, and Juggernaut. Let's bring some of that creativity into the Destiny world with some new amazing modes that excite players of all skill levels. I could also see a version of gun game working really well in Destiny, where you start with a white or a green weapon and progress all the way into certain pre-configured legendary and exotic options. Truly, the possibilities here are endless, and that's not even considering the thought that Bungie could create a Forge mode allowing for user-generated content, but that's probably best saved for another video. Of course, with all of these new modes that we can dream up, new maps that are designed to fit these game modes are a must. Destiny has such a unique universe, certainly one of the best looking games out there as far as the art department is concerned. I'd love to play some of these fun scenarios as well as the existing modes on some fresh new maps. I think what makes Destiny so frustrating is that the veteran players who have stuck around for a while can see this potential. It's a game that has always felt like it's just a few steps away from greatness, but instead of moving things forwards, at times it feels like we're taking one step forward and two back. For these new modes to succeed though, we need a constant focus on keeping things balanced in the Crucible so that certain degenerate playstyles don't get too out of hand. We just had a recent balance patch that tuned shotguns, 120 RPM hand cannons, and a number of other pain points in PvP, and time will tell how these adjustments pan out. But there's also a huge amount of work to be done on rebalancing subclasses and the ratio of ability power to weapon power in PvP. Even before Stasis existed, Top Tree Dawnblade was considered by most players to be S tier above any other option. And recently, Trials has devolved into which team is better at running into walls to charge a Chaos Reach faster. It's very frustrating when there's a build or strategy in the game that you simply can't counter aside from just adopting it yourself. How do you plan on beating 3 Chaos Reach Warlocks who are sword peeking you and denying every engagement until they get their supers? Or how about facing 3 Stasis Titans with overshields that are so strong that they can't even be headshot by a sniper rifle? This is just something that we can't have in Destiny for PvP to be balanced. You can aspire all you want to climb to the top of a competitive ranking ladder, but if certain playstyles exist without many counter options, you're going to be frustrated that your skill growth just really isn't getting you anywhere. We can also have really fun game modes featuring incredible innovation, but if certain playstyles exist which offer such a great advantage that they become oppressive, the game really won't be that much fun for you. Imagine playing against 6 Bubble Titans in control with infinitely chaining supers. A good idea might be to disable exotic armor perks which grant super energy at no cost in PvP, and heck, I'd even go as far as to claim that there shouldn't be any way to boost your super regen in PvP aside from getting a kill. Builds which focus around getting your most powerful ability, the super, before your opponents are particularly frustrating to play against. The simple reason is that they make avoiding gunfights the most effective way to play, and they destroy the fundamental element of a PvP game, which is dueling with our weapons. Players need to be given goals to aspire towards, like cosmetic items, bragging rights, or leaderboard positions, while also having access to new, fun, and innovative game modes and maps. In this way, we cater to both the hardcore and casual player base alike, without gatekeeping the best loot. The gunplay in Destiny 2 is extremely enjoyable and very satisfying. The aesthetics, the animations, and the diversity of Destiny's gunplay is essentially unmatched in the FPS landscape. Yet somehow, the Crucible is in a state where it feels like a required annoyance to many players, reserved for only the sweatiest of the sweaties. So yeah, I'd say that the Crucible very well can be saved. it can and should be made into an enjoyable place for players of all skill levels, but this won't happen overnight. There's a lot of work to be done. Let's hope that the Witch Queen will bring us Bungie's promise of a renewed focus on PvP. Please let me know in the comments about your thoughts. What are the things you like most and least about the current state of PvP? Also, be sure to subscribe while you're down there. If you like this video, I think you'd also enjoy one I made recently about the biggest mistake that Bungie keeps making for PvP weapon balance. It's the video shown at the top right of your screen and also linked in the description.